Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast. Every 2 weeks, we come together, we talk about an anime that we have recently watched separately, and then we discuss it and ask a bunch of questions, come up with very few answers, and then turn the discussion over to our audience so they can do a much better job than we could ever do. And we watched the anime Toilet-Bound Hanako-kun in the past 2 weeks. So to help me discuss it, I need the help of my co-host. And first off, and by the way, we're going, for you kids out there, this theme is 80s movies featuring ghosts. Thank you. The Patrick Swayze to my Demi Moore. Jeremy, don't worry. This anime can, this podcast can be our pottery wheel.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the anime actually gives just enough of the like creepy in the personal space that this ghost does. It's just the same. It's just the same.
How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, it's been a pretty busy couple weeks, but I did find a little bit of time. Oh man, that's right. I found a little bit of time to play Octopath Traveler because a storm rolled in and completely took out my internet. Lightning struck the power pole in front of my house while I was calling my cat on the porch. And then we lost our water for the rest of the next day as well. So I didn't have power or anything, so I was like, well, it's time for the Switch. Finally pull it back out. So, yeah, that was my adventure.
Very cool. We also have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man to my Dan Aykroyd. Oh, nope, I'm sorry. That's a typo. He's the Slimer to my Bill Murray. It's Jason. How you doing?
As you can see, I decided to start fresh with my beard. For those haven't.
Your beard is like normal length.
It's all
I
trimmed
know, right?
down.
It's Troy length.
Yeah, it's not quite that short.
Oh, I'm 100% focused on the mustache right now for Star Wars Squadrons next month. And everything's coming off but the mustache, so I could be a 70s X-Wing pilot.
Nice.
It's gonna
Cool.
be glorious.
I am not a manga reader. Never really have been. But I saw, I think it was on Reddit, there was just a one frame that really caught my attention. And the comments were just like, oh my God, it's so terrible, so terrible. And I was like, I have to know more about this. So I downloaded Shonen Jump. Chainsaw Man, it is not for children, for one. But for two, I hope it gets an anime. Oh my goodness, it is so good.
Wow.
It's like this cool cross between like a demon hunter, but like he can transform because he has to make a pact. And it got almost like a Dodohedro kind of feel to the art and storytelling. But then there's like this demon hunter police girl, because like the demon hunters have like this police unit, and she like adopts him, even though he's like a grown man. But takes him in, and he's gonna help him. But come to find out, she is just so sociopathic and terrible. It's amazing to watch the slow burn of it.
When you said chainsaw, man, I was thinking of like Lawnmower Man and stuff. That sounds like it's very different.
I was thinking Evil Dead, which sounds kind of close.
Yeah, it does.
I think most, this could be completely ignorant, but I thought most Shonen Jump usually were popular enough to get to an anime.
Oh, that's cool.
So I wouldn't be surprised. And my name is Troy. Man, I've watched a lot of stuff lately, but the thing I'm most proud of is I just finished season 1 of Robotech. That anime is very dated, but it is a warm cup of tea on a cold day to me. I've had it so many times, like just watching as I go to sleep or cooking with dinner in the background. I read the Robotech books when I was a kid. Like my Podunk's little school library, for some reason, had the Robotech book before I ever watched an anime. And I was like, planes that turn into robots? That's my dream. And then eventually found the anime. So like the Adventures of Rick Hunter and stuff, and I didn't realize how like soap opera-y and melodramatic it is, but I loved it anyway. I watched the whole thing. I'm trying to convince myself to go to season 2 now, but we'll see. Me and season 2 don't always get along.
When you trying out Vader Immortal?
I put 20 minutes into it today.
What'd you think so far?
So far, so good. But you know, I've blocked like 30 lightsaber or blaster bolts, and that's about it.
But that opening spaceship scene is super cool in it.
And the ladder. I don't think I've ever climbed a ladder in VR before.
Right?
And that's like the only time I've ever like felt the motion in my stomach. Like, oh, okay, this is the thing. Like looking down from the edge of the castle. Like, okay, yeah, focus on handholds. Don't look down. Oh, it's great. I'm just really happy that game came to PS4 finally.
I'm glad.
And then yeah, I'm using that and still basketball while I wait for Call of Duty to fix itself and Star Wars Squadrons to come out. Oh, Star Wars Squadrons! I dream about you. All right, let's talk about a Toilet-Bound Hanako-kun, which probably needs a better name. I think I wrote this anime off completely hearing the name. But before we go to any spoiler section, let's talk about our non-spoiler reviews of it. So if you haven't watched it, you can kind of help come to your decision. Jason, what did you think?
The first half of the first episode, I was kind of upset with you. And I was like, I am out. This anime is just not for me. By the end of episode 2, I was 100% in. I enjoyed this anime way more than I think I probably should have. And I think it's mainly because not only were there really cool and interesting twists on the normal folklore horror stuff that we normally see in anime, but the characters are just so well done. Even though they're kind of simple and surface level, they're not exactly deep characters, but they're so fun to watch, especially our main character. But yeah, really enjoyed myself on this one. I didn't think I would.
All right, Jeremy, what did you think?
I was kind of in Jason's boat, but for a lot longer. I think it wasn't until around episode 5 or so that I was like, okay, I get it. I like this. This is cool. And then from then on, I really enjoyed it. But to me, it kind of comes across as it's missing an opportunity maybe to be a little bit more dark. And I know it's not really going for that, but maybe that's just the flavor that I was looking for based on some of the cues that I saw, just to maybe add a little bit more edge to some of the things that happened. But overall, I did really enjoy it. I thought it ended very weakly, though. It definitely didn't go where I thought it would, and didn't take me up to some big important event that's coming to a climax the way that the majority of anime do for the ending of a season. Instead, it just kind of went off into left field and did something else. So
I kept having a thought while I was watching. I was like, man, I wish I wasn't reviewing this and just watching it casually, because casually watching it, I think it's really great. I find it very funny, and it also hits really good creepy notes. It has some really creepy visuals and atmosphere, which I think is incredible that they pulled that off. Like, I would laugh and then be creeped out and then laugh again, and to have that mix I thought was so cool. The visuals are so unique. They have like comic book panels that slide into place over scenes. It was really fun. But then like when I started like, okay, now I have to put on my reviewer hat and think about character arcs and stuff, I'm like, I don't know if it holds up that well or if it's that perfect. And I kind of feel like it was a disservice to it. Like, maybe this is just something to enjoy on the surface level and just enjoy. And I do think it is. That's kind of what my impression of it is. So I enjoyed myself. I just think like if I had to build a case for why this is the greatest anime, I'd have a really hard time doing that. I hope that makes sense. All right. Thoughts on the opening and the closing, you guys?
Okay, so to begin with, the music of the opening is just outstanding. Whichever band that is, I looked them up and I can't pronounce their name, but fantastic job. But yeah, the visuals were fantastic. Or at least I thought they were. Probably enjoyed the music more. I watched nearly every intro. The outro was decent, along with the visuals and music. I enjoyed both.
Yeah, same thing. I thought it was cool how they hint at so much of what's going on in the anime really, really well, while still leaving you completely confused. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, things make sense after you know it in the anime, and then you see it and like, oh, okay. They
Yep.
even like hide some characters. They're just silhouettes, and then once you meet them in the anime, they actually get to appear in the OP. I thought that was really well done, and yeah, like Jason said, the song is kicking in the OP.
Yeah.
The outro, I like was trying to put together clues from it, so I watched it a lot. It's a very unique style. I didn't dislike it, but it doesn't live up to the hype of the first one. Also, in the intro, I love that he comes up and does the number 7. He puts the 5 and the 2 because he's number 7. Like, oh, that's so cool. Because at first I was like, that's just a weird dance, and I'm like, oh no, that's important. Yeah. So let's go on to our spoiler section and actually, really dig into this anime, which is about a toilet ghost. And so
dirty.
everything from here on will be spoilery. So we'll be talking about characters, plot points, theories. My daughter has read the manga, but she refused to give me any spoilers. She's actually like waiting upstairs for me right now to tell me spoilers once the podcast is done recording.
Nice.
That was our agreement. And then, so yeah, but we might stumble upon some stuff that could be, really smart and ruin stuff in the future. So just be aware. We start this anime in a nice school. It's like a really unique, old-fashioned school in Japan. And we hear them talk about the 7. Every school has the 7 wonders, but this school especially has the 7 wonders. They're urban legends, things similar in America to like Bloody Mary and stuff like that. And we meet a girl who's looking to have a wish granted by summoning a little girl ghost who is in the girls' bathroom called Hanako-kun. So this character we meet is Nene Yashiro, and she's there to get a wish to make a boy fall in love with her, which is her greatest wish. Even though we find out the boy doesn't matter. She couldn't care less about the boy. She just needs someone to fall in love with her because her life's a mess and she has really fat ankles. And she just needs to
Daikons.
Man, they grind that joke over and over, and it's never not funny. Your guys' thoughts on Nene Yashiro?
I loved this character, and only because she is worse girl. She, I swear, she doesn't have an arc. She has a character horseshoe because she kind of ends up back where she started. As far as I'm just the worst. I just want someone to love me. I kind of don't care who it is. And the lengths she's willing to go to not only get it, but also like it keeps happening over and over. And she even mentions it. I get into trouble. I almost die. Hanako saves me. And like, she clearly sees the path that, oh, if I go down this path, that's going to happen. And then she gets distracted and then she goes down that path. And she was the most, obviously the protagonist, but she was so entertaining to watch her get into these hijinks. And like I said, I did not like her at first, and she just grew on me because of how terrible of a person she is.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I thought that due to the art style, all these characters, they just really pop out, and I think it maybe compensates a little bit, even if they don't, just because there's so much personality in it, and it was just fun to watch the way that she'd behave and the expressions on her face. But yeah, she was very funny, and I saw a bit of sincerity where like she knew her own failings. I mean, she calls them out pretty quickly in the first episode, and yet she just, like you said, Jason, she just can't seem to rise above them. But there's something endearing. There's something so endearing about a character who's willing to acknowledge their failings and then keep trying, even if they fail. Yeah.
You know, in this first episode, when she's like, I'm all about that love and that romance, I'm like, oh, Jason and Jeremy are going to kill me.
Yeah.
I did it again. I
true.
did it again.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, Troy.
Yep.
But then she's like a parody of that. She's like literally calling out how stupid that is. And because of her obsession with it, and it's a character flaw and not her character trait, and it's played off for laughs, it works very well. My only complaint, this is a very cosmetic, that's not right, but on the surface, you know what I'm trying to say.
Shallow?
Shallow. There's a very shallow complaint. Her English dub voice, every time she'd like, especially when she'd like squeak or squeal about something or scream in excitement or horror, I was like, she sounds like she would be the secondary or the mascot cute character in an anime who's hanging around with the main protagonist. You know, she's the mascot of the anime. That couldn't get out of my head every time I heard her talk. So about halfway through the anime, I looked up the voice actress. And she is literally the little cat from Fairy Tail. And I'm like, oh, she is the mascot who hangs out with her. That's why I'm hearing that. Especially because in this, she turns into a fish a lot, and then like it would scream, and I'd be like, man, I can't get this out of my head. Happy, yeah, she's Happy from Fairy Tail. Once I got over that, she's a great character. I thought she was very funny. So she goes and she does this summoning ritual, and instead of a little girl, so this is an actual urban legend, the Hanako legend, that you can summon a little ghost girl in a bathroom. Young boy in an old school uniform appears instead. And this is our main character, Hanako, who he becomes both her master, and he's also like the guardian of the balance between the spirit and the human world and other stuff. He's both creepy and mysterious, but also emotionally fragile. Like, you can tell, like, this guy needs a hug, but he might stab you if you give it to him. So what are your guys' thoughts on Hanako?
I really enjoyed I think his interactions with Nene is what sold the anime. Because they're both playing this romantic cat and mouse, but then they also realize, oh, right, one of us is dead. And it's interesting to see the hijinks that they get into with each other. Because, like I said, we've seen this format before. Like, you have someone that's powerful that hunts down something. Someone else is the underling. They get in trouble. They have to be saved. Like, this is not a new format. But the way it's presented is so well done. And Hanako, I think, really lends to it well. Because you're right, Troy, about the, like, you're creeped out by him. And then you're laughing at him. And then you pity him. And then you're creeped out by him again. And, it really interesting way to tell this story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to repeat too much of what you guys said because I think the same exact thing, but I am curious. In the sub, Hanako, the voice actor does such a good job of making everything almost seem casual to Hanako. Like, when he responds to people, unless it's a moment of sincere, like, emergency or passion, in most conversations, it's just, like, nothing really matters. It's like, hey, that's pretty interesting, boy, or something like that. And it's so unusual because it sets him apart from them. It implies this age, like he's seen so much that he doesn't care about the troubles you're going through. Did they do that very well in the dub? Did they execute on that?
Yes, there's totally moments where, like, they're heading into danger, and he's like, la da da, another day at the office. Like, this is very frivolous. But then there'd also be moments of, like, or maybe you'll lose your head. And
yes.
Like, that's what I mean by, like, he flips the switch. Like, he's very funny, he's very silly, he's almost childish gleefully going into danger, and then they wouldn't be in a dangerous situation. He would just say something really with like his creepy smile and his eyes hid behind his bangs. It was like, oh, okay, you're a little creepy sometimes, kid.
Yeah, in the sub, it wasn't as often that he would be very gregarious or loud when he would make those comments, because I'm remembering some of the scenes where it was animated in a way that you described, and in those, it was almost like he was being sarcastic and aloof is the tone of voice that I took out of it, which just, it was a very odd, uncomfortable, ghost-like behavior. So yeah, I think they executed really well on making him feel inhuman.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him. I think his mystery is probably one of the deeper. I don't think this anime is very deep, but I think his mystery is one of the deeper parts. Why is he a wonder? So we find out in the school there's wonders, which are the urban legends, and they're very powerful, and they are supposed to be that working together to be the guardians of the divide. And then there's also ghosts, and then there's just regular spirits. Him being a wonder kind of doesn't fit into some of the other wonders we meet, and then I was like, okay, what's going on with that? There's another evil character. We're in spoiler sections, but I won't spoil it yet. Who we meet that's like, how does he fit into that? So yeah, he's very interesting to watch, especially since every interaction you're wondering if he's faking it, if he's genuine. Is he really good? Is he? There's times where he's talking to an underling where he comes out. I forget what episode it was. He goes out to the spider guy and he's like, "What did you tell her?" And then after that, he's like, "Yeah, it's everything. No, it's fine. That's not a big deal."
He had the knife behind his back, obviously for us to look at, as in this is not just this is a veiled threat, basically.
Right. So like he's definitely got some menace to him where you're not even sure he's a good guy, and his whole thing is like, I committed a murder to be here.
One last thing on Hanako. I really want to know how he died. What's his relationship with other characters? And why doesn't he have a Yorishiro?
Oh, he does.
Do we know what it is?
Yeah,
Yep. Does. It's his little brother.
Wait, how do you know that?
Because every Yorishiro has a black sticker on it, and his brother has a black sticker on his cheek, and he has a white sticker, so I think that they're each other's Yorishiros. I think that if the stickers get pulled off their faces, they both disappear. That's my guess. But, yep.
Well,
I was trying to explain things to Tanya about what the Yorishiro was, and then I was explaining these two characters, and I was like, wait a minute. He's got that black sticker. That's why it's there. It's just,
also,
yes.
like, does he have a realm? Because all the other
the
wonders have their own
bathroom. Yeah, the bathroom.
But
he calls it out early on where he says, like, yeah, if they come into the bathroom, that's where I can beat the crap out of anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, he did say that. Man, the sticker on his brother thing, that's definitely in the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm. I haven't looked up anything, and I have no evidence to back me up, but that's my guess.
You said it so confidently. I thought I missed something completely.
I'm just really confident that it's true. Maybe I'm a fool, maybe it's completely wrong, but I am really confident that that's what's going on. Because it's like, what better place to hide something than right in front of you? And it's a great trickery to show us him with his white sticker on his face, so we get used to the idea of a sticker on the face. And then we don't really notice when his brother shows up with a black one. We see it as a reflection instead of linking it to the Yorishiro in our mind. And I think that's what's happening here.
The only thing that makes me question is everyone else seemed to know exactly where theirs was and have control over where it's hidden, where his brother seems to be he didn't even realize his brother was around.
I think he's lying to himself. I mean, it really plays into the whole, the Yorishiro is the most precious thing to them, right? And if this history happened between him and his brother, then what better story beat than to reveal later on that, in fact, they are still in death the most precious things to each other. I don't know. It makes a lot of sense story-wise too.
It does. It does. I do agree with that. All right, I'm gonna keep going. We'll just leave that linger. If I find out, I'll let you know. Off
Okay.
the podcast.
Yeah.
All right. So she basically makes that wish. I want this boy to fall in love with me, and because of how his power works, if he grants a wish, there has to be a price for it. So instead, he's just like, "Here's a love advice book. Just use this." And then, like, he spends, like, the rest of the day trying, like, hey, if you're good at the gardening, why don't you give him some stuff from the garden while she grows produce? So she leaves a bunch of, like, tomatoes and cucumbers on his desk, and he's like, that's
awesome.
weird.
See, now I would have been like, this rocks.
Yeah, I know. And so we see a bunch of situations like that. Like, hey, go try sewing a button on his clothes that needs fixing. And everything she tries, she messes up. And so she gets depressed, and eventually she finds out he has these mermaid coins, and that if two people eat them, that they will become bonded together. So she eats one and then runs out, angry at him that he hid that from her, sees the boy getting confessed to by another girl, and this never comes back up. He says, I'm already in love with someone. And that never got answered, but he does say that, and she freaks out, and it shows her like falling into water, and she actually turns into a little fish because she's now been cursed by the mermaid. And if you eat one of those coins, the mermaid curse turns you into a fish.
Now, did they call him a coin in the dub? They called him a scale in the sub. It was a mermaid scale.
It was a scale. He called him a coin initially, but then he's like, they're actually mermaid scales. They are literally the scales from the mermaid.
Okay.
But it was his magic coin before she knew what it was.
That makes sense.
I loved how he's in the middle of explaining this to her of what they are, and like he's like, okay, you don't want to eat this, but you know this is kind of how it works. And as soon as he said love, she goes, nope.
Yeah. Yep.
So the mermaid, which is a spirit that lives in the ocean between the outer world of the spirits and our world, she comes to collect her new subject, and he shows up. Hanako shows up and says, no, fights her, cuts her, and de-summons her and banishes her temporarily. And then he's like, okay, well, I still need to grant you a wish. What wish do you want now? And she's like, well, I wish to be human. So he eats a scale, and that way he'll share the curse with her. So now she is a human, but will turn into a fish if she gets wet. And if she gets slightly wet, she'll grow scales on her arms. But it also means that they are now bonded. And he's like, the price is you have to be my assistant, which technically means cleaning the bathroom every day.
Now, I have a question. Based on how he answered her wish, do you guys think he actually did the genie thing? Because it seems like it was a cause-effect situation. Instead of it being a magical solution, a magical granting of her wish, the way that we saw in another instance a different character have a wish granted to them. In this case, it was very much a, oh, well, then I will do this thing which has this effect that's predictable, just like handing you a book and expecting you to read the book and everything. It still seems to me like he hasn't granted a wish.
It's hard to know if it can work either or. He even says, I haven't granted wishes in a while, and I'm not very good at it, so I kind of do it this way instead. So I could see as him like, this does still technically qualify, but it's hard to know with him because the way he does word things like that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that like in this episode that kind of went, okay, this is interesting, was the curse of the mermaid. It didn't turn her into a mermaid. It turned her straight up into a fish. And it's because that when the two people eat it and accept the curse, they go half and half, and then it shows this fish head with legs.
Yep.
But I loved that idea, that like twist on that mermaid curse. It's no. It's a full fish that we need to share of being transformed into.
Yep.
And then this episode closes, and this happens for a couple episodes where a girl gets on. We hear a woman's voice on a radio, and it's a very nighttime low tone, late night radio voice, but they're talking about like the next urban legend that the next episode's gonna be about. And I thought this was just preview. It ends up being story, and I thought that was a brilliant move because it was like, hey, we're setting up the next episode, but it ends up this is actually important. But I gotta say, 100% my jam. This thing. I used to listen to a podcast called Welcome to Night Vale, which was about a late night DJ in a town full of every strange thing you could possibly think of, talking about like, hey, the glow cloud has taken over the police force today. All hail the glow cloud. And it was comedic, but always creepy, and just the way he delivered very bad news. Man, I love it so much. And then the fact, and because I listened to the English dub, they nailed it in the English dub. And I am so glad I did listen to the English dub because it was just so good. It was everything I wanted.
That's cool.
All right, next episode. So now, she's the bathroom cleaner of the bathroom, but she has to leave because she has a date, which is really just like stapling papers for a boy that asked her. He didn't even stay and hang around. That's how it works. And she's pouting in class, and then stuff starts disappearing. And her friend, whose name is, she has a friend named Aoi, who is in, I forget the first name. It's like a Asuka. I have it written down here. It's Oi Akane, who has a boy in love with her whose name is Akane Oi. And I can't get over that. There's just two characters with the opposite of each other's names. And she even likes this boy, but won't date him because then if she married him, her name would be Aoi.
Yeah.
Anyway, Aoi is like her best friend who always has heard all the gossip and rumors. So she's always telling her the rumors. And this rumor is there's this thing that will take your stuff and it wants you to look at it. If you look at it, it will kill you. It's called a Yusei. And then we see that it's kind of, there's like this blob thing hiding underneath her desk, and people's stuff starts disappearing. Her stuff starts disappearing. She gets a little wet and ends up running away because scales are growing on her, and she ends up in the old part of the school and starts finding stuff on the ground. And so she starts going after it and picking it up and runs into this blob monster full of eyes, very creepy looking. And Hanako comes and saves her again, dispels it, and it turns into all these pink bunnies. And he's like, honestly, they're just these mischievous little spirits that like to take stuff. But someone spread a rumor, and whoever's spreading rumors is changing how these spirits and wonders interact with the human world. And they made it dangerous. So I need your help to change the rumor. So she changes the rumor to, like, if you have a piece of candy with you, they won't hurt you. So now the pink bunnies are always getting candy. They're called the Moke. They might be the best character in this anime.
Yes. They're awesome.
Oh, he did. He died.
Yeah. In the background, they're always just doing this audio commentary of what's going on. Oh, he died.
Yep. Give us candy. Oh, that's heavy. Yep.
They're also, like, they're not good either. They're kind of evil. They help the bad guys. My daughter told me that, like, they just want destruction in the world. That's like their life goal.
Oh my god.
They're not
that's
even
awesome.
good guys, but they're still adorable.
I had
But
no idea. That's
I think
awesome.
and this is the reason this episode caught my attention, is because I love the idea that you have these folklores that are still based on the power of living human imagination, like without that belief system, if you will, these things have no power. And they even call that out later. It's like, if people forget about us, then we don't exist anymore. But I love the idea that instead of, hey, there's this one rule set, it's no, rule set's based off of what people believe, and if that belief changes, it will. And it is stark and dark with a character later on that I was really impressed with how that whole resolution happened. But we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
And the second half of this episode, she's hanging out on the roof with Hanako, and they're talking about boys, and this boy shows up, and he is an exorcist from the Minamoto family. His name is Ko, and he's like, hey, I'm here to banish the spirits of this school, and Hanako, that's clearly one of the spirits, so I'm gonna take that guy down. He's evil. She argues with him. She's like, he's not evil. He's like, well, he's carrying a knife, so he's clearly a murderer. There's no reason for a spirit to have that unless they murdered somebody. And he ends up battling Hanako. He does well at first, but then Hanako, you find out, is like not even trying, and then he changes into like a cape costume. It's still a school uniform, but it has like a cape to it now. And seals his weapon, which is, he carries it in an umbrella, but it's a sacred staff type thing. And he puts a seal on it so it would be less powerful. And then this guy becomes their friend. Just hangs out with him. His name is Ko. He's he's mostly portrayed as your typical blockhead. I'm gonna do the good thing the good way, no matter what character. So, what did you guys think of Ko?
He was great comedic relief, I think, because most of the interactions we have with him, it's for laughs, but he was a decent character. I did like in this scene that Hanako noticed that this artifact was way too powerful for him. It was burning his hands.
Right.
And so he's like, here, you're not ready for this thing. I'm going to seal it for you. But also another interesting thing, there's been scenes where Nene is just like talking to someone and no one else can see Hanako. And so people think she's starting to go a little nuts. But Ko can see Hanako as well because he's an exorcist. So I found that interesting that there's like select people that can see him.
Mm-hmm. I also thought it was really cool that he brought to the table this other character who was already introduced previously as a romantic interest of Nene's, and finding out that this character is kind of like this third party watching over the situation. We don't know exactly how powerful he is, but it's implied that he's powerful enough to actually be a threat to both these good characters that we know and then some other characters that we get introduced into to later. And it adds a sort of dynamic that I actually really appreciated because it left a wild card in the mix. You just don't know where this guy's going to go. As for Ko, just for himself, yeah, all the same things. There's one character that has a name for him that I just absolutely love, and I think it was called like lame ass traffic safety earring or something like that. And the interactions between those two characters at times, some of the interactions I absolutely loved. I was dying laughing. It was hysterical. But yeah, it was pretty entertaining.
Probably one of my least favorite characters. Not that I minded when he was in the episode and stuff. I thought he filled his role very well. And some jokes did land. Probably my favorite parts with him though is when they show how competent he is. Like when he was in the scene cooking, and suddenly like he's actually very suave for a second, and I was like, "Oh, cool! It's nice to know you're not just a bumbling idiot." And his interaction with the character that Jeremy was talking about, who we will come to, definitely put some emotional weight. But I thought he was more just kind of a extra. Like I'm so busy like trying to figure out Hanako. That I'm like, hey, no, I don't have time for you. Not right now, guy with an umbrella who fights spirits. I don't have time for you. Yeah. So that was my general feeling about him. I have a note here about great music. There's great music through this whole thing. Middle of episodes, including the OP and the ED. This really did have a good soundtrack. In the third episode, so now Nene is worrying if Hanako is a murderer. He had said like, "Oh, I am a murderer, JK." And so now she's like, "I don't even know what to believe." And then she hears a new rumor about the second wonder of the school, and this is called the Misaki Stairs. And if you step on the fourth stair, you will end up in the land of the dead, and then you'll be chopped up, and your body parts will be brought back to the school. And then her friend told her this, and the next day after her friend leaves and has to go somewhere, her friend has disappeared. And the flower she was working on is gone. Her teacher doesn't know she's even missing. She literally doesn't exist. She even calls her parents, and her parents are like, who? So she no longer exists. So she goes and talks to Hanako about it, and Ko also shows up, and he's like, yeah, I know someone who's also missing, so I'm going to also get involved. And Hanako agrees to help. So they go to these stairs, and he explains what they're actually doing is when you step on the stair, you're going to the boundary of this wonder. And again, wonders are either ghosts or spirits who have been... A wonder is a title versus like what you are. Like Hanako's a ghost, but he's also a wonder. This ends up being a spirit that is also a wonder. And they're in the boundary, which we kind of mentioned earlier. Hanako's boundary is his bathroom. It's where he's most powerful. He has full control over it. They're in this wonder's boundary, which is kind of a maze-like area with a lot of stairs. And some crazy stuff happens while they're in there. They answer phone calls about having to find body parts. It's actually a really creepy scene. Dolls with the number 2 notes on their face that have say the number 2 because it's the second wonder. And they're trying to find arms. All they're finding is like mannequin arms, but they end up like turning those in so the giant scissors won't attack them. And then they're like, okay, well, if we're gonna figure this out, we have to destroy the spirits. Yorishiro,
something like that. Yeah.
Which is basically a item that's it's their battery. It's where their power comes from, and if you break the seal on it, then you'll depower them to just their normal status. They'll lose control of their boundary, and they won't be all powerful. So they climb to the top of these stairs, and there's the body that they've put together with the parts they've collected. This really terrible looking, hobbled together parts. But then this woman comes out, and she's like, "Oh, it's perfect. I love it." And she breathes life into it. It comes to life and then falls apart. And she gets really upset. She pulls out giant scissors. She attacks them, and Ko like takes the hit on his arm, and his arm turns into a fluffy doll's arm. Like it's on a Cabbage Patch Kid, not like because there's already been creepy dolls everywhere. Now this looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid arm, and I made the comment. I was like, man, her are those cat ears on her? And it's like, oh no, I guess it's just her bow. That's drawn weird. And then I found out like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Later. My daughter, who's already seen this, didn't notice, and I was like, okay, I gotta raise a better child. So the wonder is the Misaki stairs, but this spirit her name is Yako. What did you guys think of her?
After this episode, I really enjoyed her scenes that she's in. She's not in too many more scenes after this. But the scenes she is in, she's pretty endearing, actually. Like, you know, she's obviously not a happy ghost or spirit, I should say. She's got some issues to deal with. Now she is not human, right? She just takes on
she's
human
not a
form.
ghost. She is a spirit,
right? But I think probably my favorite part in this anime, which we're going to get to, is Hanako goes, well, it's not the Yorishiro, it's not up here. It must be down below.
Yes. Just shoves Nene down.
Tied her with a rope first, and knew she would turn into a fish on the way down.
Yeah, he did. Yep. I was a little bit confused when all the resolution happened and we do find out like who she was, because they said she's a spirit, but then we see this flashback of her seeming to be a little girl that the teacher was like braiding her hair, and that there's these journals where she was keeping records of her feelings toward this guy. And so I'm still a bit confused over like, was she always a spirit? And then like, was she inhabiting this little girl, or was she watching this little girl and she like absorbed the girl's, childish interests, but then clung to those? Was she spawned by that?
I think she was just a young spirit or a lesser spirit that appeared as a little girl to him, because I think she's always been a fox spirit. I don't know if the journal's real or just her manifestation in the boundary of her memory. And you got to remember too that the one we see initially is still her, but also manipulated by the rumors that has driven her mad. So maybe the journal was like a way of keeping up that part of her conscious. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she's not. I don't think she's a human at all. Her and the fourth wonder are not humans. They're just spirits.
Yeah. He's something else. Yeah. So yeah, other than that, she's pretty cool. I like that she brings this sort of irritated and always ready to be snappy. Mm-hmm. It's a nice flavor to add to the mix for this anime.
I really like, and she's kind of the best example of this. But aside from Ko, there's no like heroic characters here. There's all just a bunch of neutral characters who kind of have roles they have to fill. So she could become a bad guy tomorrow again, and it wouldn't be surprising. She's in no way like, you have my axe. You know, she's never doing that. She's like, yeah, I'll help you reluctantly because it's my job and you're my boss technically.
Same thing with 4, and I think the OP conveys that really, really well in the way that it shoots them for the opening scene, where it's like they've got these expressions where you're like, I don't know if I can trust that expression.
But even Hanako a little bit, you're like, I don't think you're a hero. I think these are just characters that aren't killing me today, so I'll take the win. For the most part. And that, like I said, she's not in a lot, but she's a really good example of that. Probably better than most characters, but the fourth wonder as well, which I thought was cool. It's just cool that let's go ask this character. Hopefully they're no longer mad about what happened and don't want to kill us anymore.
Yep.
So he's Hanako sends Nene down to the bottom through a trip, and when she wakes up, so she's near a shrine with stairs, and she, like Jeremy said, she finds a journal, and it's about a little girl who really liked this nice teacher who would come and cut her hair and would talk to her, and she's not used to that. But then Yako attacks her, appears and is like, "Oh, you're not getting to my battery." But eventually Nene does, thanks to Hanako and helping her. And when she breaks the seal, she gets like to see the flashback of why this thing was important. So we get their story. And again, we see the teacher cutting her hair, and then he's like, "Hey, be in our class picture." But then this is when you realize like, oh, she wasn't a part of the class. She wasn't a little girl that the teacher was nice to. She was a spirit that the teacher had met and included in this class picture, and no one had ever done that. And we find out that she had heard about a teacher dying on some stairs, and waited for this teacher to come back, not putting together that the teacher that died was the teacher who she was waiting for. And the body she's trying to put together is the teacher. She idolizes him, loves him, thinks he's the greatest and wants to bring him back to life. Can't happen. And I love that every time she interacts with the character, like she's like, "You're okay, but you're not that teacher that I love." Yep. But yeah, so once that seal is broken, she basically just turns into a little fox. Her boundary is no longer under her control, and so she's still alive, but is no longer possessed by the rumor. She's basically just a fox spirit right now that has been cut off from her wonder powers temporarily. And they make nice with her, and then she bites them and runs off.
Yep.
So that would be episode 4. And then does anything happen after that? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and then Hanako kisses Nene on the cheek.
That's right.
And that really confuses her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we forgot to talk about the hot guy, who we're going to talk about him once he gets properly introduced. But there was a hot guy that ran into Nene, and a black origami bird that like hid in her clothes, and then goes back and reports on this whole event.
I can't stand the way this guy's drawn because of the cat mouth. I don't know what it is about that cat mouth, but it just upsets me.
You watch your mouth. He is precious to me.
The cat mouth cracks me up because there's just so much deviousness with it. It's like you just know that he's thinking horrible things, and he's gonna do something terrible.
God, I can't stand it.
There are so many characters who are narcissistic that when we get to the episode with the evil mirror, and he's like, "You guys are like a 7 at best," I was like, "That's
Yes.
perfect for this anime," because there's so many characters like, "I'm cute, I'm the cutest," boys and girls.
Yep.
Unless you have daikon legs.
Unless you
Then
have.
you're a 4. I forgot how good the mirror scene was. It was awesome.
Nene is having dreams about Hanako, and so she talks to her friend about it, who's like, "Well, then just date him." And they talk about this new rumor going around about the confession tree, and that if you confess to someone underneath this tree, it'll work out for you. You'll fall in love. And they see the boy I mentioned with the reverse name. He's out there practicing confessing to Aoi, the best friend, to his best friend as practice. And then the next day they go to school, and those two have started a relationship. They're like, "We're in love forever."
Yep.
And then Hanako's like, "Hey, I want you to meet me under the tree too." And she's all freaking out, like, "He kissed me, now we're going to the confession tree. I guess I'm gonna start dating a ghost boy. I don't like him, but I need to practice dating anyway." Because she's a terrible person.
See, I told you she's awful.
They go to the tree. He does confess her feelings to her, and she's like getting all flustered. And he's like, "Say no. Why aren't you saying no? Hurry up and reject me." And then the tree comes alive and is like, "Oh, I don't like it when couples don't work out." And he's the next evil spirit, and they defeat him and turn him into a little shrubbery.
Yeah, I thought at this point I was starting to get a little frustrated that every time that he stopped a wonder, he didn't actually kill it.
Well, and this isn't a wonder, but this is a spirit.
Yeah, I thought it was a wonder, wasn't it? One of the numbered ones.
We only meet 4 wonders this entire time. There's Hanako the 7th, Yako the 2nd, Sujigomori the 4th, and then the Hell of Mirrors. Those are the only wonders we meet.
Didn't we also meet number 5, the library?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought 4th was the library.
Is the library 4? Okay.
I thought it was. I could be wrong though.
Library is 5. 4
library
is
is
something
5.
else.
Yeah. No reading ahead.
We haven't met 4.
Okay. I thought Tsuchigimori, who is the library, was 4, but I misremembered. He's 5. Yeah, but the tree's not a wonder. And so what comes of this though is like Hanako starts laughing, like, "Oh my god, did you really think I was confessing? That's so dumb." And she starts like, she gets emotional, starts crying. She's like, "I don't know what's going on. You kissed me." And he's like, "Oh no, I was putting a shield on you. Like you were spiritually weak after what we went through." And I was like, "You needed a shield. You thought, oh," and she's like, "You should have explained." You're right. I should have. Because he's always so coy about everything. Yeah, she's absolutely right. He plays things way too close to the vest. And he apologizes, and they have a nice, sweet moment. There's definitely they both are like, "You're not my type," but then there's always like emotions running between these two. If you're into that kind of thing.
They have chemistry, even though they deny it.
Right.
Yeah.
Then Ko gets yelled at by his brother, who he catches him hanging out with Hanako, and the brother is the hot guy from the first episode, and he's telling, "We're here to banish the spirits. You can't be hanging out with the spirits." And Ko's like, "He's kind of a nice spirit. Why are we killing spirits if they're good?" And his brother's like, "I'll give you some more time, but you got to figure this out." And then Nene goes to the library to try to figure out more information about Hanako. And while there, a pretty young woman tells her, "Well, what about you go to it is the 5th wonder." Look, I have the note here. The 5th wonder, which is it's the 4 o'clock library. That's why I got confused. The 5th wonder is the 4 o'clock library.
Yeah.
If you go to the library at 4 o'clock, there will be a secret door that will lead you to a place with books with information about everybody. And this girl clearly knows who Hanako is, and it is name dropping him, like, "Hey, if you want to find out about Hanako," and then she disappears. and then she bumps into the librarian teacher, or he's a science teacher who's in the library, who has like black and white hair that's divided in half. And her friend tells her about the 4 o'clock library and how there's white books about the living, black books about the dead, and red books that are dangerous, but no one knows why. So Nene and Ko go to the 4 o'clock library. A butterfly lets them into the door. They're looking for Hanako's book, but instead they find Nene's book, which is mostly just filled with poetry about Hanako. And then she decides to read about her future. The book turns red, and this giant illustration, which was very creepy, one of the really good creepy moments, this illustration of her comes to life and starts trying to eat her. And Hanako shows up and saves her, and then Tsukigomori shows up. And we can just call him Spider if you want.
Yeah.
He grows like these extra arms, and he's like, I am the Spider, the keeper of this library. And I also work for Hanako, so welcome. How can I help you? He's actually a nice guy. What did you guys think of him?
I really enjoyed this character. He was kind of the mentor old guy that you could kind of get advice from kind of character. At the same time, just that twinge of evil, right? Just that
Yes.
you never know if he's just going to turn around and consume you. Even like when him and Nene are walking down that corridor later, there's just this eerie tension, even though you're like, yeah, this guy's kind of a nice guy, and then you learn about his backstory. Yeah, he's a really nice guy. He's still gonna eat you. But
Yep.
I found it fascinating that the book turned red once she started reading the future, and that might be why some books are red. Is they were originally one color.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. Ko's older brother made the comment that no apparitions are good. All of them are evil. And I don't know how true that is, but I definitely, like we've all been saying, there's this sense of malevolence that you just get from all of these apparitions. Every single one of them. There doesn't seem to be a single one of them that has, a purely good aura that they're throwing off. So I thought his interpretation of that was great. But yeah, as far as the books and turning red, I think that's part of the trick of the library too. I think because the rumor that goes out there is like, yeah, you can read the white ones, you can read the black ones, but the moment you read them, at least the future part of the white ones, because he commented directly about that, then it will turn red and then you die. So I don't know. That seems like a really nice snare, like a good way to present the sort of like the genie's trick, where you think you're doing something that's okay by the rules, but in the end you get killed.
What did her future say? Didn't it say something like you would never have a boyfriend because your ankles are too fat or something?
No, it said that she would have one basically, or it said that the love would not be returned or basically he would tell her that he didn't want to go out with her anymore because of her daikon legs. But we don't know how much of that was actually like that she had a relationship or that it was just in her mind, because she fabricates these relationships so much that it might be that she was just imagining the relationship and then the person shot her down with this comment, because I think this portion from her future happens in episodes 10 and 11.
For my thoughts on Tsukigomori, I think he's fascinating to the actual story. I think it's so interesting that he is a science teacher in the school that everyone can see, but he's also a spirit. He's been around longer than Hanako, but works for Hanako, knows how Hanako became a ghost and a wonder. He holds the keys to the kingdom, and Hanako clearly does not want him unlocking anything.
Mm-hmm. And yet his whatever that thing is called, Yakin and Gomori or whatever, that thing that's the source of his power, his battery, is something that has to do with Hanako. So he actually sees Hanako as precious, and his interactions with Hanako. That's so
So
complex.
I was on the opposite spectrum with him than I was with Ko. I wanted this guy on the screen all the time because I was like, give me the info, please.
And I did love how he, like, whenever he gets asked a question, he goes, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, and then just the complete dump of all the information he knows.
It reminds me, I think the character's name is Dr. Stein from Soul Eater, the guy with the giant screw in his head. He reminds me of him, where he's clearly the wise, good guy for the heroes, but he's still a little creepy on his own and not fully trustworthy. When we see these butterflies leading him around, and he catches one, is like, eat it, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of like Beetlejuicy. That's a little weird. Yeah. So then after he meets these characters, they're like, hey, we're told, and this part is driving me crazy. Hanako is like, hey, we're the Wonders. They all work for me. Our job is to maintain the balance. One of us has gone rogue and betrayed us and has formed a bond with a human when they weren't supposed to and has turned against us. My plan is to depower all of the Wonders until we find the culprit. So we've already depowered Yako, who shows up as well in this library. And he's like, now I want to depower you, Tsuchigomori, and turn off the 4 o'clock library. And Tsuchigomori is like, well, then you have to do this. He's like, I really don't. And he's like, yes, but humor me. And so the price is, you have to tell me your most embarrassing secret. And so Nene goes, she's like, I used to write love letters to imaginary boyfriends. He's like, you literally did that last night.
And it's a lie that you used to do.
Yeah. Ko does his. For some reason, that one's wrong too. And they're like, well, what about Hanako? He hasn't gone. And he's like, I don't want to hear Hanako's deepest, darkest secret. And then they're like, but we do. So Hanako's like, my secret is I like donuts, which will be important. So yeah, he's like, okay, well, then I will take. I think did they call her a priestess?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Nene has become a priestess at this point because she's the only one who can break these seals. So he takes her down this creepy cave and he gives her a moon rock. He's like, it's a real rock from the moon, according to him, and lets her break the seal. When she breaks the seal, she sees the past, which is him being a teacher. But we know he's still a wonder and still a spirit. But he's taking care of a young boy who is clearly Hanako, who's covered in bruises all the time. And he treats him almost every day. He's like, who's hurting you? And he won't tell him. Except for this kid goes on and on about the moon. And this is 50 years ago. So right when humans were going to the moon for the first time. So he's obsessed with it. And he gives the teacher his moon rock that he has as a gift and as a promise, as a reward for a promise. You have to give me a promise. And that's all we see. And then she wakes up and Tsukigomori's like, oh, you got to see my past, didn't you? Tells her a little bit more. Yes, that was Hanako before he died. And he told her no one's ever been able to change their future except for one person. And he tells her Hanako was the one who did it because he had read his future in the 4 o'clock library that he would be a scientist someday, but instead he died, became a ghost, and became the 7th wonder. And that wasn't his fate.
During this time, does that mean Tsuchigomori was a wonder at that time as well?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. I didn't realize that he was a wonder then as well. That's what blew my
mind. Is he was already a wonder, which means there probably was already a 7th wonder at the time that Hanako has replaced.
That is definitely possible. I interpreted it that maybe Hanako created the 7th slot, but maybe there was already one.
Especially since later on we're going to see that wonders can be replaced.
Yeah.
Remember from the very beginning, Hanako, per the legend, is supposed to be a little girl, but instead is a little boy.
Oh, you think maybe he replaced the little girl?
I do.
I'm pretty sure as well.
Oh, I didn't think of that. That's cool. Why would he keep the name?
But why and how, especially according to him, he asked God. He asked God for this to repent for his sin. So so why is he here? What? Yeah, okay, we've gone over that.
Yeah.
And then we get the scene where Hanako confronts the spider guy about Okay, what'd you tell her? In the next episode, Hanako notices that Nene's been acting strange, but she's avoiding him. She's working in the garden, and Ko comes to her, and they decide to make donuts together. And they do it. He's like, "Oh, I'm just the worst in the kitchen. I need help." And then you find out like he's a master chef. He's actually good at it.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy, we never said you could have a guest on the podcast.
It's my little buddy.
Yeah,
So-
for the audio listeners, there's a praying mantis buddy that Jeremy brought on. So yeah, Ko helps her cheer up while they make the donuts. His brother eventually shows up, but then she leaves to go bring the donuts to Hanako. We see one of the bunnies report to the bad guys, and then so when she goes up to the roof to talk to Hanako and give him the donuts, another black origami thing appears. He cuts it, and then what looks like at the time his doppelganger appears. And you would, if you've been paying attention to the OP, which I hadn't at this time, you would know that this doppelganger has been in the OP. He's the second time a character comes up and goes 7 at the end of the OP. I just thought it was Hanako again. I really did. I didn't notice until later. Like, was that there the whole time? Did I just not notice the sticker changed? Because he looks very similar. I think he has slightly bluer hair, and a black sticker. Otherwise, he almost is exactly identical. And we'll find out later it's his twin brother. So this is actually the character Tsukasa, the twin brother of our Hanako. What did you guys think of him?
I think without Hanako, he would not be nearly as creepy, because he's this similar reflection of, devious on one hand, and then playful on the other hand. But in his deviousness and playfulness, it's evil every time. Like, he's doing really awful things, and he twists things to make them bad, unlike Hanako, which he's twisting things to, not necessarily for good, but not necessarily evil either. So he's definitely a direct reflection of Hanako, but his scheming is really what I'm interested in, and also like his history with Hanako. Like, that is probably the most interesting thing about this anime is, we've learned so much about these urban legends and like how the rules of this universe work, and then now we've got this copy of a wonder that is, doing bad things, and is, clearly has evil intent.
Yeah, there's some really strange things that I'm still trying to figure out, and they don't really make sense to me, that he says at the beginning, which one of them is that he actually has trouble moving in his early point, and that's why he's not really wandering around much or manifesting anywhere. And so it really makes me wonder, like, well, like you were saying, Jason, what's the history here? How did he disappear for so long? Because clearly Hanako thinks that, thought that he was gone somehow. Like, it was such a shock to see this character. He recognizes him, and it just like completely destroys him to see this character. So he hasn't seen him in probably decades. But yeah, the comparison, the dichotomy of the two was fantastic.
Oh, we haven't done that one in a while, have we?
Nicely done.
Saw that opportunity.
Very impressed.
Yes. But yeah, absolutely. And I love the opportunities that it brings up for storytelling. His introduction is where I started getting really interested in the anime.
Yeah, he's a great villain, especially because there's that obsession with his brother. Like, every time he sees his brother, he runs up and hugs him like, I haven't seen you in so long. And he's like, oh wait, no, it was literally this afternoon, wasn't it? But he does this while in the middle of schemes to get his brother killed. Like
Nice.
he's over here like, I'm gonna really mess him up this time, and then sees him and runs over and hugs him. And he's also like says stuff like, I'm just so happy you murdered me. Like, he's so twisted and clearly messes with Hanako's mental state every time he sees him. Like, Hanako is completely out of his depth, doesn't know how to handle this, totally puts him, off his guard. And that's really interesting to see, too, for a character who's been like, I'm in control of everything, I can handle everything, and he sees his brother and he just breaks down. And especially when it doesn't seem like his brother is all that more powerful, or at least in the same level, but who knows, we'll see. And in this scene, he doesn't manifest for long. Nene actually throws coffee on him and makes him disappear. And then she asks Hanako, is it true if he killed him? And Hanako pins her down to the roof. And you can kind of see that he's crying, and he apologizes and then leaves. And this is kind of a serious moment for them, kind of hurts their relationship going forward. Mm-hmm. And then we see the villains meeting in what's called the broadcast room, and we learned that these radio broadcasts we've been seeing setting up episodes are actually the villains creating the problems that the heroes have had to deal with so far. They're using this radio to create the rumors. And then they create a new rumor about a ghost that grabs you, and it grabs Ko at his locker, and then Ko captures it because Ko has decided, I'm going to help spirits if I can. Like, banishing them will be a last resort, but I'm going to, I've decided after spending time with Hanako that I'm not going to be just a slay him kind of guy anymore. So he captures this spirit, takes it to the Hanako's bathroom, and he's like, look, I caught this guy. What do I do with him? And Hanako's like, well, you got to help him get past his regrets. So Ko takes this guy out into the school, and then he unties his mouth, and the guy just starts screaming at him and insulting him. And he's like, you're going to do sick things to me. You just want me in your porn. You want to put me in a porno.
So funny.
And I'm like, is ghost porno a thing that this guy is concerned about? This character is Mitsuba, who I thought was going to just be like a one and done episodic storyline, and ends up being a major player in what's coming. So what did you guys think of him?
He wasn't in it enough, but like, I kind of wish he was, because he has a great personality of, when you're looking at him, he tries to be as adorable as he can, at the same time, like, just slightly pathetic, so that you'll do what he asks. But then as soon as you turn your back, he's just this stuck-up prick.
Yep.
And just will spit on you. But then you turn around, he's just like, oh, we're friends, right? And so that kind of, it fits in really well to this cast of characters. But I'm much, much more interested in like what happens to him, once we get past this part of the story, and like how the spirit world can be maliciously molded to do not great things. And also like the moment between him and Ko later hit way more emotional chords with me than I thought they would, because both these characters are kind of temp characters. They're not main protagonists. But the writing did a really good job of establishing their relationship, even though, come to find out, he forgot who he was going into high school. So, yeah, I thought he was a great addition to the cast, especially moving forward.
Yeah, I absolutely loved every moment this character was cracking jokes and and just being a total dick. But I didn't find that the relationship landed as well with me, just because, like you said, Jason, when they were introduced in high school, which I got the impression that was the first time that they got introduced, was when Ko was a new transfer, and so this guy comes over and says, hey, I'm so and so, I'll be sitting in front of you. And so if Ko forgot him already, and I didn't see a lot of like flashbacks of them having much history in the high school, I was like, where is he getting this strong attachment to this character. It's all just from right now, from realizing that he forgot him and then feeling bad for him. And so it didn't seem like it had the depth for me to really sink in with that. But I still found him to be a great character, and I totally agree with like the way that he winds up being a completely different variant of this character later, and what that brings to the table as far as like constructs, and whether or not, if you take a piece of a soul or all of a soul, is that enough to be the person? Can you get memories out of it? If you can't, I don't know. It brings so many philosophical questions about this world into play that's really cool.
I'm a little confused because like when we finally get his backstory, he's like, hey, my real regret in life is that I didn't have any friends, and in junior high I was bullied really bad because I'm such a pretty boy, and so when I got to high school I was just completely normal, so no one would notice me, but then no one noticed me, and so I didn't have any friends. But when we meet the character, he's just the meanest person ever. He's so mean, and I'm like, who was bullying? Did you become mean because of the bullies? Is that like a defense system? And maybe that is it. I'm not sure. It seemed a little odd versus his backstory.
There's a moment where he's telling Ko about all this, about how everybody was treating him and they were all bullying him, and he says, because I was cocky and because I'm kind of girly looking, as he defines it, and Ko says, oh well, and he says it in such a way that it was like, yeah, that makes sense. And so then he calls him out. He's like, don't say it like it makes sense or like that justifies it. So I think this was his behavior. I think people bullied him because he was an ass. And I think his interpretation of it was bullying, whereas most of them were like, this guy's irritating. We're going to pick on him because he's irritating and he's mean and he's a jerk. But yeah, that's what I think happened.
As far as the emotional resonance, I'm with Jeremy where it didn't hit me. Like I didn't get sad at this moment, which I looked over at my daughter who was bawling. Like she loves this anime, so she's the one who asked me to pick it. So we watched it. She made sure to watch every episode with me, and she was just crying so hard. And I'm like, I feel nothing. But when I look at the story analysis, I think it makes sense, especially for Ko. Because not just because, hey, me and this guy became best friends today, but it's I've been going around murdering these spirits, and the one time I got to know them, it went bad. And so there's also all this
baggage.
What have I been doing this whole time? How many other good people who just wanted friends did I just wipe off the map? And then the one person now that I could redeem myself a little bit, I failed him. I think there's that built into it. I don't buy that they're just best friends now. But I think it does make a lot of sense why this would be very important to Ko, why he would be very driven to help this character.
I think for me, we were super close to a resolution for Mitsuba in him letting go of his regrets and moving on. And I think that was because I don't think it was necessarily about Ko and him before Mitsuba died. I don't think that was it. I think it was just Mitsuba was the first person, in a long time, even after his death, to take notice of him and actually care about him and who he is and like help him out. And then right as he's about to get that resolution, it's kind of stripped away. And I think that's probably why I felt a little more emotional impact for that scene.
Interesting.
So we've been kind of dancing around the plot. So I'm gonna we've already said most of it. Basically, Ko, he takes him to do photography because he says that was his regret. But he's like, hey, you're not taking pictures of people. You're taking pictures of insects. Well, what's going on? And you find out, hey, I didn't have any friends. All that stuff. Ko's like, I'll be your friend. And then eventually they do kind of bond, and Mitsuba sneaks in a picture of Ko. It's the first time he took a picture of a person. But then they're confronted by Tsukasa, who pulls out a radio, and a rumor comes out that changes hey, this lonely ghost will grab you, to this lonely ghost will snap your neck.
Yes.
Because if you don't, like, if you look at him or don't look at him or something like that, because he wants you to feel his pain. So like now he's and then Tsukasa like pulls out a chunk of him out of his chest, and then he twists into like this weird Maligan shape with like a camera built into the face, and he's all messed up and twisted. And Hanako hears this. So Hanako has like these two floating spirits that are with him all the time. So when he's always getting news or reports about what's going on around the school, as they go check on things. So he hears this from one of his spirits, and he goes, and he's like, he tells his brother like, "Why are you doing this? Why would you do something this creepy and evil?" His brother's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you." Blah blah blah. And Tsukasa leaves. So Hanako kills Mitsuba. Man, and this is what hit me was Hanako's reaction. He was like, "Don't try for the dead. They're already done. Like, there's just nothing for them." And you know that's not his. I don't think that's his worldview of the dead so much as his worldview of himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's still very self-reflective of like, I'm not worth. Now that I'm dead, I'm not worth trying for. And that actually I thought was like the more emotional beat of this episode. But Mitsuba dies in Ko's arms, and then we get a scene where Ko's alone in his room looking at the pictures that he got developed from the camera, and he sees the one of himself, and he ends up crying again.
One last thing about this interaction is we come to find out that Mitsuba had actually talked with Tsukasa before meeting Ko and offered to grant him a wish. And he wouldn't tell him what his wish was because he was so not confident with himself. And finally, when he's like, basically it came to light that his wish was for people to notice him. He goes, "I'll make sure people notice you." And that's when he pulls out the radio. And he's like, "Oh, by the way, your price is a part of your soul."
Yeah, and he says in the English dub, he called it his reason. He's like, "I took your reason."
Yeah.
In the next episode, Nene notes that things are more awkward with Hanako now. So she's taken up just playing idle video games, Sims on her phone instead. But then the hot boy that she had met earlier, so now it's time to talk about it. His name is Natsuhiko. He's basically, we never find out why he's there. He's just a henchman for the main villain. Yeah. And his thing is he's in love with her, and he's like, "I'm sure she loves me, and that's why she tries to kill me all the time." He's this super hot but very shallow, dumb guy. And honestly, by the end of this thing, he was my favorite character. I'm like, I love this guy. This is a great henchman with a really dumb reason for doing his evil things. Who's just like, "I'm super hot, and she loves me. So I'm gonna do evil." Whatever. No, I'm not gonna think about it too hard. Jeremy, what do you think of Natsuhiko?
Oh man, he made me laugh so much. Like I mentioned earlier, I actually get a kick out of the cat mouth, but his antics are just really funny. And there's these moments where he actually does things to try and keep what's his name, Hanako's brother, his little brother Tsukasa, to try and keep Tsukasa in line. Like there's moments where he just walks over and picks up Tsukasa and he's like, now we got to behave a little better than that. Things like that. I don't know. It's just really unusual to see when you're presented with Tsukasa as this, wild card smoking gun character that you don't know what he's going to do next. This guy's actually not scared. And it's probably just because of how stupid he is. But yeah, he's really funny. He has some of the best comedic beats. But I'm also really curious because we know that Hanako or Tsukasa grants wishes to the dead, while Hanako grants wishes to the living. And we know that the green-haired girl, the main sort of villain, is in a bond with him because he granted her a wish, which makes me wonder if this character is also dead. He's also a ghost.
But the whole problem that Hanako had stated is one of the Wonders had bonded with a human. So it'll be interesting to see what the resolution of that, because I think you're onto something.
Yeah, it's really weird because if he's telling the truth about only giving wishes to the dead, that becomes really confusing. Maybe there's a different one that's actually bonded, but I don't know. All things point to it being her. So yeah, it's.
Maybe she's the wonder?
I think she's the seventh wonder.
I don't.
Well, I mean, she certainly has this weird ability to use
The
the
radio.
speakers,
Right.
the radio, and it seems like it's her thing and not Tsukasa's, because she even stops Tsukasa from using it and tells him to be careful with it.
No fake rumors. No troll rumors.
Yeah, no big rumors.
Yeah. I guess we could talk about her because basically this hot guy goes out for a walk with with Nene, and then they throw water on her and capture her as a fish, and then bring her to the main girl. So, Natsuhiko and Sakura. So, Jason, what did you think of the two?
I thought he was funny. I enjoyed him being in the anime. His cat mouth still upsets me, but the door scene coming up is definitely my favorite scene out of the whole thing, and I think it's the comedic timing with this character is pretty great, and I love when when they're coming back from that adventure, he's just completely oblivious to the fact he knows that she's trying to kill me because she loves me.
It's love.
Yeah, it's
Trial of love. Any thoughts, Sakura? Our main villain?
I don't know a lot about her is the problem. And we don't really get a resolution or any sort of lingering threat at 12 or at the end of the episode or in the anime. It's just kind of left untied. So I think she's interesting. I definitely want to learn more about that relationship between her and Tsukasa, but I don't know a lot about her is the problem.
Yeah, there's even moments where she says things like, I don't want to do this. I want to help you, but I can't because of the bond. And I don't know if that's true or not. It could just be an easy way for her to justify her actions.
She's the radio voice, so I love her, and of course I love Natsuhiko, like I already said. So they capture Nene and they take her to meet Sakura, and they all have tea together. And Nene's like, "Well, I won't talk," and then she talks to them for like a half hour, telling them everything. And then like Jeremy said, they're like, "Hey, we don't really want to do this, but we have to," and they bind her chair, like captures her with like teeth and claws. And they lock her in a room, and it starts filling up with green slime, which I thought was interesting because I'm like, well, if it filled it up with water, she'll just turn into a fish, but the green slime is not water, so she didn't transform. But also Natsuhiko is tied to a chair in there as well, and she's like, aren't you scared? He's like, yeah, not really. He's like, are you scared to die? She's like, yeah. He's like, okay, then you really want to start panicking right now.
This
that
scene,
line.
yeah, this scene made everything to me for this character. Like, it even fixed the scene having him there, because if she was there by herself, I would have been like, well, this is tropey. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he was there just blew the trope away. I loved it.
And also, they changed her clothes for some reason.
Yeah,
which
they
was
changed
hilarious.
her outfit, but they kept the skull.
Yep.
She wears a skull on her chest. So the room fills up and they get flooded and they wake up in a strange void full of doors. And Hanako comes on through a radio. He's like, you guys are located literally nowhere, but these doors are all to different places in time. So don't open any doors you don't recognize because that's dangerous. But you need to find a door you do recognize and come through it, and I will find you. So Natsuhiko starts opening random doors. He opens the first door, and there's like this giant evil monkey toy thing that attacks him, and he survives it. He goes through like a lava pit, and he goes through all these doors, and eventually he comes back to the evil monkey toy, and it eats him and drags him away. And he's like, do your best. And he just gets dragged away by this evil monkey toy. And even Nene's like, yeah, that character's going to come back again.
Yeah. And the monkey
totally
are bringing flowers to the door and setting flowers there because he's dead now.
Yep.
You totally skipped over the Terminator reference.
Oh God, yes.
What was it?
When he opens up the lava door, there's the skeleton. He's like, "I'll be back."
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Yep. So then Nene is left alone, and she eventually finds a door. She recognizes she goes through it, and she's back in her school. but she's in the past, and she sees, I think his real name is Akane, but it's Hanako as a human, and she tries to help him because he's beaten up again, and he runs away and he drops a key with a rocket on the keychain, and she picks it up, and then the real Hanako finds her in time and then brings her to his bathroom to the right point in time, but she kept the key, which isn't addressed again, but I'm guessing for future plot will be very important.
Did either of you notice she opened the door, walked in, never closed the door behind her, and then Akane runs through that open door?
Yeah, I wondered if that was a thing too.
You think he went to the nowhere?
I'm wondering if that's kind of how he died, is he ran into nowhere.
That would be really interesting. I did think it was really funny how it showed the calendar, and the calendar said today is a day where you like lose things. Don't lose anything today. Something like that.
So Hanako apologizes to her that she got captured and puts her clothes back on, her regular clothes, and she keeps the key. And then we see Tsukasa in like a classroom smearing blood everywhere and drawing up his next plan with bug blood, or it's hard to tell. It like squishes a bug and then yeah. All right, so in the next episode, Nene goes to the boys and she's like, "Hey, look at all these weird these pictures from the garden club. There's all these weird hands in them, and they're getting bigger in the pictures, and they're always behind me." And then the hands appear in the bathroom, and Ko's like, "I'll deal with this. Let's arm wrestle." And one of the hands is like, "Let's do it!" And he arm wrestles the hand, and he loses really bad, but then the hand disappears, and like, oh, they just want to be interacted with, so they like give him hand massages and do all this hand stuff to him, and the hands disappear. Until the last hand grows a mouth, talks, and grabs Nene and pulls her into one of the bathroom mirrors. It's weird to me that in his boundary is a mirror. No, I guess that doesn't make sense. I guess there would be a mirror to his. Huh? The mirror to the hell of mirrors mirror is located in his girl's bathroom.
A mirror. I wonder if any mirror can be used.
He specifically said only that mirror.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He says like it all mirrors are connected to it, but only this mirror is the mirror you can go through.
Oh, I missed that.
But
so if he can control everything in his domain, if the hand reaches in, can't he just have the hand not do what he wants it to not do? I don't know. Yeah, that makes sense.
Also, important to note that the photographer who was taking the pictures that had the hands in them, Ko sees that it was Mitsuba was the photographer. So he takes that notebook. And then Nene wakes up in the Hell of Mirrors, which is the third wonder, and Mitsuba is there. And he has no memories, and he's like, I've been stuck here, and these hands showed up, and I asked them for help, to get me someone to help me. They grabbed you, so I'm assuming you could help. And she's like, this is the cutest guy I've ever seen in my entire life. He's like a little puppy dog. And so she's like, I know everything about boundaries. Just talk to me. And he's like, well, I'm going to stand way back over here. She's like, dang it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they have some interactions of her basically trying to get him to be close to her. But eventually they come upon a mirror, and we find out that the Hell of Mirrors attacks your greatest fear. So she sees her friend in the mirror, and the mirror is like, you got the fattest ankles in the whole wide world, and everyone hates you because of your daikon leg. You got sucked fat ankles.
Daikon.
It was so good. This whole sequence was just fantastic. I was like, because you not only do you have the mirrors doing this, but Mitsuba joins in.
Yeah.
He has no reason to. She is here to help him, and she has been helping him. And he's like, daikon legs, you have daikon legs. Just join in there like he's one of these horrible mirrors.
And then from this point on, that's all he refers to her as.
Yes. Yeah.
Even in that recap of the next episode, it just says daikon on the top when she's talking. Eventually the spirit emerges. He's like a bird face thing with giant hands, and just like disembodied though. And he's like, well, we're gonna eat you. And all these like mannequin-looking things come out of the mirrors, but when they open their mouths, they're all teeth inside.
Terrifying.
Yeah, it was really scary looking. And they're trying to eat her. Mitsuba does defend her, but then gets scared and runs away, so they attack him instead. And they're saved, and she's like, "Well, this is the part where Hanako saves me," but it's Tsukasa who shows up, and he literally takes the third wonder and bashes it into the floor until it's dead. And then he's like, "Nene, you're alive! Good for you!" And he's like, "But I'm here for Mitsuba, poor Mitsuba, who I stranded here."
I found this part super interesting because if he's a reflection of Hanako, or at least that's what we're being led to believe, and he's able to assassinate a wonder in their own boundary, like that really speaks to the power of these two characters.
Yep. Well, and it's weird because she even calls that out and says, but Hanako was scared in number 2's boundary. How is this guy so powerful?
Right.
Yeah.
I forgot about the scene where Nene asks Sakura, or tells Sakura that she must be Hanako's boyfriend. That was her assumption, and everyone, and all the villains, like freak out, like, "Oh my God, you're dating my little brother!" I only say that because at this point he calls Nene Hanako's girlfriend. She's like, "No, that's not what it is." Tsukasa's like, "Hey, Mitsuba, you're really weak. I had to hide you in here because you can't exist in the living world because you're so weak. But hey, eat this heart of this wonder, and that'll be cool." And he's like, "I don't want to do it." He's like, "You're gonna do it." Meanwhile, Hanako is trying to figure out how to get to the Hell of Mirrors. He asks Spider Guy. Spider Guy's like, "Well, I'm in charge of time. So you would want to go to Yako, who's in charge of space. She could literally get you to anywhere. She doesn't have control of her boundary, but the boundary still exists, and she could guide you through it." Yako agrees. They do have a conversation about like how the rumors affect you, and she's like, "It's still you." And that's important to Ko because when he told Mitsuba, as he was dying, the real Mitsuba would have heard him. But she takes him to a mirror. They go to the Hell of Mirrors. Nene's been knocked out, and Tsukasa's like, "Oh, thanks you guys for coming. I need Mitsuba. You're a wonder now. You need to become the wonder and then kick them out, or they'll get rid of you, and you need to decide." So Mitsuba's like, "Well, I don't want to disappear, so I will become the wonder." We also find out that the chunk he ripped out of the real Mitsuba, he put into artificial parts. And so
he gathered together a bunch of minor spirits and just clumped
built a body for him.
Spirit. Yeah.
And so that's what this Mitsuba is. The real Mitsuba is actually dead. Again.
And Hanako makes it pretty clear, like this is like a forbidden practice amongst the spirit world.
Well, so yeah, Hanako's like, it also sounds like this has just never been done. And then Tsukasa's like, "You can do whatever you want if you're a wonder." And he's like, "Well, I want to become human." He's like, "You could do that." And that's when Hanako's like, "No, the dead can't become human. That is not okay." And they keep getting ready to fight, and then something will happen. Like they'll start having a conversation, and Tsukasa's like, "All right, okay, once again, we're starting a fight."
Yeah.
And I like
they even show like round 2, round 3.
round 2, round 3. I liked how his scarf, the evil hands are now part of his scarf. I thought that was his cool character design once he became the Wonder was cool. He does fight Hanako for a little bit, but then Nene's body like almost gets destroyed, hit by rubble, and he saves her. And then he asks her like, "Hey, I don't want to die. Could you not destroy my boundary?" And has them push through the mirrors, and they end up back in the bathroom. And then
is weird because he even manages to push Hanako out. So if he's less powerful, presumably, than number 3 was originally, then how is he able to restrain and push Hanako out of his boundary? But number 3 could be killed by, I don't know. It's so weird. So weird.
So they get returned to their bathroom, and then from this point on, he goes to like the broadcast room. He's on team bad guy at this point. He's one of the villains. And Natsuhiko, I absolutely love Natsuhiko, walks in, and the monster that bit him is still like a small form of it is still like hanging onto his arm. And he just walks in like, meh, made it back. Love you. Who's the new guy?
Yep.
And then we come to the final episode. I have been told this final episode's in the wrong place in the story. It's supposed to happen after the donut part, after they made the donuts and they kind of had that issue. But it's presented here, and it is kind of, I think, a weak ending. You know, it has some stuff that makes me laugh. Basically, it kind of follows up with the mermaid thing. These spirit fish called porcupine fish and come to Nene and are like, hey, you're the princess of the mermaid world. Come and have like your pick of suitors. You'll be the most beautiful thing ever. She's like, no, and then they trick her into the water anyway. And they're like, you need to drink the blood of the mermaid. And they're like, look at the suitors, and they have like pictures of fish. She's like, a fish? They're like, have you seen your legs? You're not gonna get a human boyfriend.
Yeah. Oh God. I love that they went there.
They literally say you need to cast aside your heinous legs, which is something a fish would say to a human, but it's specifically targeted at Nene because of her fat ankles.
Yeah, they're like, you'll have a beautiful tail fin, though.
Yeah. Hanako saves her and threatens the fish away, and then yells at her for even considering basically becoming a spirit, which is what would have happened. And she tells him, I just want to understand your world better. I don't understand you. I thought if I became a spirit, maybe I could get into your mindset and figure out what's going on. You freak me out. I don't know what's going on. And he apologizes. He tells her, I did murder my twin brother, and I will tell you everything eventually if you promise to stay with me. And so she promises. And then we see another radio broadcast start, but then it gets cut off because they're like, no prank broadcast, because it was just Tsukasa talking. And then Ko promises to help Mitsuba, and Nene sends him some vegetables, and that's our ending. What do you guys think of this final episode?
Pretty mediocre, like you said. Definitely would have fit better where it was intended to be, but I think with the way they were trying to wrap up the story, it's okay, but very weak ending. I wasn't satisfied with it because there's just too many loose ends going on. I think if there was a promise of a season 2, it might have been okay, but it was funny. I loved the fish trying to trick her into coming back. Because it seems like the mermaid queen knows that she can't just come and try and take her anymore, so they're trying to like get her to come willingly.
I love they showed a shot of the mermaid and she has stitches across her belly from where he cut her. Yeah. Yep. That was good.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, the pictures were amazing because she's thinking hot guys, and they're like, oh yeah, they're definitely hot fish.
Yep.
And she almost agrees because they said she'd be popular.
Yeah, and she does. She's like about to drink it. That's what's so hysterical to me. This was one of my favorite episodes, even though I think it was absolutely horrible that they put it at the end. Okay. But honestly, on its own, I loved this episode. I thought it was really entertaining.
I think it's also insinuated she's a little hypnotized there at the end because Porcupine Fish's eyes are glowing and stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. One last thing I do have to say is that in the English dub, Hanako's voice is the same voice as Midoriya Deku from My Hero Academia. And you can totally tell whenever he tells her to get down or like, be careful, like, oh, there's Deku. I hear Deku screaming.
Oh.
But he did. Other than those few lines where like he's like in danger mode, it was cool to hear a very different version of that guy's voice. He did a very good job, like I said, of being creepy. Okay, so that wraps up. Let's do our final reviews. Jeremy, what did you think?
If we gave half points, I would definitely give a half point to this above the score I'm going to give it because I loved the art. It was absolutely beautiful, stunning. The colors are just gorgeous. The line work is great. The characters just pop everywhere. And it carries so much of the tone and feeling that they're trying to portray. It's just really good. I was enamored by it every episode. Music was great. The characters were really entertaining. It was a bit too much slice of lifey for me in the beginning, and maybe that's not even the right word to use. Maybe it's just more of it didn't have enough that I thought was at stake, and I think that's because those characters that he defeated, they didn't get killed. And I think that always kind of reduces the impact of defeating an enemy. Is if that enemy sticks around to be cute afterwards, you're like, oh well, this isn't a serious show, and that's totally fine. It's just not my cup of tea very very much. But the way that they played these characters off of each other and the world that they built, I was really fascinated by. I've got to give this a 3. I want to creep toward a 4, but I got to give it a 3.
All right, Jason, how about you?
Like I said in the beginning, first half episode, I was upset. And I think if I had to pit this against other anime and give it a score, I'd probably give it a 3 as well. If I stand it on its own and my enjoyment of it and the cool twists on tropes and folklore along with the characters, I have to give this a 4. I would definitely put it on like a top 100 list or like a top 50 list, because I would want to put this in something that I would rewatch again. So yeah, 4 for me.
I definitely enjoyed it as like a casual fun, and I really enjoyed the creepiness of it. Man, give me more creepy stuff in anime, please.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things, and even in funny situations like this, it worked for me. Really, my biggest complaint is that in the episode where they first meet Mitsuba, Tsukasa used just white bandages to attack, and it was just like the most boring power ever.
Traumatized.
Really? We're gonna go
Just
here.
traumatized.
No, I'm actually kidding, because you could tell that it was like tattered bandages. They drew it really well, and I was like, "Oh, that makes sense. It's not just."
You're just upset
Whoa,
that
whoa.
someone put you in a particular picture.
It was great. I thought it looked great. You got to be his favorite character.
I'm gonna give it a 4. I had a very enjoyable time watching it. I don't think it's like the super best plot ever, and the characters aren't the deepest ever. But man, I had a lot of fun watching it. I was very entertained watching it, and I think that's enough to warrant giving it a 4 in this situation. It's not Promised Neverland, which is currently on Netflix, and if you haven't seen it, you should totally watch it.
Oh,
Yes.
All right, let's talk about our next anime. It is going to be Jason's pick. He has chosen Id Invaded. It's a 13-episode anime. It's about the Matrix. No, Jason, what is it about?
So it's kind of like a mix between Matrix and Inception. So basically, in this world, law enforcement, leave me alone. Law enforcement can get suspects and hook them up to like VR and dive into their VR environment, but apparently the VR environment can be dangerous. And from the synopsis, I read that only people who have killed someone before can enter this VR system, which is a weird. I'm interested to see how they justify that or play that off. But yeah, it looks like a murder mystery in the Psycho-Pass type of futuristic world. So looks super interesting. I can't wait to dive into that one.
So I don't know if it's ID invaded or id invaded. I'm assuming it's id.
I'm pretty sure it's ID, because we're talking about the ID of people, right?
No, aren't we talking about the id? Their brain?
Yes. So the psychological id. You're right. Never mind.
All right. Well, either way, it's spelled ID : invaded. 13 episodes. I believe it's on Hulu. So that's what we'll be watching over the next 2 weeks, and then we'll come back and discuss it. If you have thoughts on Toilet-Bound Hanako-kun, animes that we'll be watching in the future, anime we've already watched, please not Sugumomo, you can leave them on our Twitter at Baka Podcast. You can put it on our email, the Anime Baka Club at gmail.com, or leave a comment wherever you found this podcast. it'll get back to us, and we will respond as we can. Thank you guys for listening, and let's say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
Hey, have you heard?
I love it. Sayonara.